and welcome back to another special episode of the My Surrogacy Journey Podcast, Mexico City edition. I'm your host, Ellie Osoba, and today I'm joined by Natalie Sutherland from the International Family Law Group. Natalie, introduce yourself.
Hi. So I'm Natalie Sutherland. I'm a partner at International Family Law Group. We're a boutique family law practice based in St. Paul's, London, and I deal with surrogacy.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us today. For our listeners who may be new to the International Family Law Group, could you introduce the firm and the work that your team does in fertility and family law?
Yeah, so I'm actually also new to IFLG, having joined on the 1st of September.
Congrats.
Thank you very much. And we deal with all areas of family law. So you're talking your divorce, dissolution of civil partnerships, financial remedies on divorce, private children arrangements on separation, abduction. And we have a huge international practice, as it's in the name. And we now deal with surrogacy, assisted reproduction, and donor conception, which is the work that I do.
Amazing. And digging into that a little bit more, can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to work in family law and why specifically surrogacy?
It's an interesting but also a slightly sadly tinged sort of story as to how I've come to this area. So this summer I will be qualified for 20 years, but I've actually only been doing surrogacy law for the last sort of 7. And the reason for that is, well, I'd never heard of it, quite frankly. I worked in a practice that just did straight family law, divorce, private children. And then I experienced my own miscarriage, sadly. And so I went back home. I was very ill for a while, but then got better and started work at a firm that did surrogacy. So I basically wouldn't be doing that but for moving firms and having had that experience. But then I was also on my own fertility journey, experiencing secondary infertility. Wow. So the sort of two worlds collided. So my family law practice expanded to deal with surrogacy. And I found it so emotional, intellectually stimulating. And it was just really cathartic, actually, to help clients create their families as an antidote almost to helping families when their relationships have all broken down. Mm-hmm. So it's a really nice part of my practice and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I can absolutely understand that. I think that's what's so special about MSJ and their partners. A lot of our member experience managers are intended parents themselves. A lot of our partners have got that sort of experience in the fertility world from like personal life. So it's really, really special to us to have people like that on board MSJ. Just digging into kind of the fuel, the passion behind family law, can you talk to us a little bit about your values and principles that guide your approach when supporting intended parents?
Absolutely. So independence is the number one. So as your lawyer, I only have what's in your best interests in the forefront of my mind. So I'm totally independent from anyone else on the journey. When you deal with surrogacy, there are lots of moving parts, lots of different partners that you will have to, so your clinics, your agency, so many different professionals that you'll have to choose. But your lawyer is entirely independent and will always be looking out for your best interests. Also, honesty. So I will be honest with you about what the process looks like, how long it may take, where the bumps in the road. I want to be prepared. I want you to be prepared. So honesty in terms of the process, what to expect, and to manage your expectations. But of course, also tailored legal advice. So everybody's journey is different. Whilst everybody's end goal is the same, we all want that family to be created, your specific circumstances that can be so different. And having a legal expert that understands that and knows where your journey is going based on your personal situation is really important.
Yeah, totally agree. Can you talk to us a little bit more specifically about your role as a partner at MSJ and kind of your day-to-day, how you help our intended parents?
So I will initially see them right at the outset of their journey. So they would choose me as their lawyer, we'd set up a meeting, and then we would have an hour's Zoom, for example. Always happy to meet people in person if they'd like to come in, but I know clients are all over the place, so actually Zoom is really, really helpful. But yeah, so I get to meet them online, go through the eligibility process. So there are certain eligibility criteria that the intended parents need to know that they meet now before they then spend a lot more money trying to conceive this child. So that is why they come to the lawyers at the outset to understand that process. And I'll also explain to them the procedure that we'll need to follow once the baby is here, and can signpost them on to additional advice. For example, if they have an immigration aspect to their case, then they would go and see an immigration lawyer. But essentially, it's meeting with the UK lawyer at the outset, meeting with the Mexico City lawyer, have those two lawyers speak to each other, understand if you need an immigration solicitor and signpost you on, and then make sure that everybody's all talking to each other through the process so that you're guided all the way through.
Okay. And why specifically MSJ? Why not just wait for intended parents on independent journeys to come and find you?
Well, MSJ is the standard, is what I think. The team are wonderful. As you said before, a lot of the team are experienced personally in terms of their own surrogacy journey or their own fertility journey. And there is deep experience throughout the whole process. I mean, you've got Mike and Wes who have gone through their own journeys 3 times, and obviously one now in Mexico City. So they have personal experience of that route for their own family. But everybody from your initial member intake person to the top, Mike and Wes, everybody's so passionate about this work. They really want you to succeed. Absolutely. And they only include the partners that have the same values. Yeah. So it's really important for me that everybody is working towards the same goal.
When UK intended parents choose Mexico as their surrogacy destination, how should they prepare from a legal standpoint?
Well, certainly speak with your Mexico City lawyers. And as I say, I will then liaise with them directly. They will guide you on that process. The Mexico City side is a pre-birth process, whereas the UK side is a post-birth process. But there still needs to be a joined-up approach between the two lawyers over the 2 jurisdictions. So there will be the application for a pre-birth order, and the Mexico City lawyers will obviously deal with that. And then when the baby is born, you're then able to get your birth certificate. And once you have that birth certificate and we translate it into English, that's when I can get right back to work and can issue that application.
Awesome. Is there any planning that can be done early on to help prevent delays or stress later in the journey?
Well, getting immigration advice, I think, is really important and not something to be skipped on. Because when you are traveling across borders and you're dealing with immigration, it is very, very important to get that advice. You don't want to be stuck in country, not be able to get your baby home. Yeah. So absolutely make sure that you get that advice if it's needed. It may be that actually your situation is straightforward, but a baby that's born in Mexico City is entitled to a Mexican passport.
Okay.
So, and of course, if you're entitled to a British passport, then you can apply for that at first as well. My understanding initially was that your Mexico City passport may come quicker, but I think actually now a British passport may come quicker. So, so the advice to the intended parents is to apply for both and just see which one gets to you quicker, so that you can come home.
Amazing. And then when it comes to Mexico City or the UK, what reason do you find intended parents may choose a Mexico City pathway?
Speed. Yeah, speed. That's the main thing that I'm seeing is the turnaround in terms of being matched with a surrogate and being able to have your embryo transfer. So it's a very, very slick process. The choosing of the surrogates, my understanding is that they are screened and ready to go by the time that you're also ready to go with your embryos. So you have that matching process and you are matching much quicker in Mexico City than you would be in the UK. Basically, there are more intended parents in the UK than there are surrogates. Yeah. And because we are an altruistic model, that kind of feeds into that because, we can only receive their reasonable expenses. So it's not something that they can receive payment for their services. So Mexico City is a commercial destination where they do receive that. And obviously that means that there are slightly more of them. But one of the sort of misconceptions that are often surrounding places like Mexico City is that the surrogates are exploited. And that's not what we've seen in Mexico City at all. The surrogates are very well informed. No. They are not, there's an economic report to make sure that they're not doing it, they're on the breadline, for example, and they need the money.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe that surrogates can do this altruistically and still be paid for their services. So there's that. So the Mexico City process is much quicker, but that's not to say that it's as straightforward as the UK, of course, because you are adding in that layer of getting an extra order in Mexico City and the travelling back. But of course, you still have to go through the parental order process when you're here as well.
Yeah, totally agree. And I'm actually really glad you've touched on misconceptions there, because obviously being who we are, being MSJ, having our Mexico City pathway, we hear misconceptions about Mexico City on a daily basis. And myself and Natalie were actually speaking about Mexico just before filming this podcast. I've just recently been for the first time. I know you've been as well.
Yeah.
I was absolutely blown away by Mexico City. The kindness of the people, the cleanliness, the standards everywhere. It really is that setting the standard destination.
And the fertility clinics, there is a complete misconception that you're going to a third world country and that their medical care can't possibly be as good as ours. I think it's probably better.
Yeah. I've heard that from so many fertility nurses, doctors now that have been out to Mexico City. They always say the clinical standards are way better.
Yeah, they're very high standards, and I mean they look to meet the HFEA standards anyway. But this isn't a backward country. Their fertility medicine and their doctors are world class, and they really do look after you.
Yeah.
So if anybody's wondering about whether going to Mexico City is the right decision for them, and they're worried about the standard of fertility care, then I don't think you do have to worry about that. Although, of course, do your research, and there's nothing that will be better for you than actually going out to Mexico and seeing it for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah. And then just to wrap up, Natalie, can you talk to us a little bit about what legal procedures take place in Mexico before and after birth, and how do these differ from what UK intended parents may expect?
So there is this pre-birth application that they need to make. And my understanding as well is that they will need to be in Mexico City. So there will be extra flights. So it's not just going out there, meeting your surrogate and then going out there to pick up the baby. There will be additional visits to Mexico City to be able to go to court. So it's what's called an amparo. Obviously, I'm not saying that, my Spanish accent, but an amparo is the application that you would make, which is your pre-birth order, and that is the ultimate order that you want to get. Get your pre-birth order, which means that you are legal parents at birth and you can get your birth certificate. Now, my understanding is that there are different judges who may make different decisions. Okay, so it's about also letting intended parents know that this isn't. It's not like the UK where you go and you're expecting to get that order. A judge in Mexico City may not give you that pre-birth order, but that's not the end of the matter, because obviously you have a baby on the way. So your lawyers will then go back to court when the baby is here and apply for a post-birth order. So you get that order and then you get your birth certificate. So it all depends on the timing. So if you get it pre-birth, great. If you have to wait until post-birth, just bear in mind you might need to be there a little bit longer. But the minute you get the birth certificate and I'm able to get it translated, that's when I can issue your C51 application in the UK court and start your process, even if you are still in Mexico City. So we can get that started. And what I also do with my clients is I get them back in for a meeting at around about 20 weeks. And the reason for that is to start thinking about the statement. So the parental order process that they have to follow when they come back to the UK is each intended parent has to file a statement. Then, of course, the parental order reporter is appointed and they have to file their report. But I think it really helps intended parents to get the bulk of that statement done prior to the baby. Because, this is a new life for them. They are in a new country where they don't necessarily speak the language and they have a newborn and they don't really want to be speaking to me, asking them lots of questions about their statement. So in preparation for that, I offer my clients to be able to come in and think about the statement. So we got the bare bones of it. We've got all the stuff that we can do pre-birth and then add to it afterwards. So,
Yeah. And for anyone listening who'd like to contact you or the International Family Law Group, what is the best way to get in touch?
So my email is natalie.sutherland@iflg.uk.com. Slightly weird ending there, so be careful. It's not a
Not a straightforward .com.
And our website is iflg.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Natalie.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
This has been a bonus episode of the My Surrogacy Journey Podcast Mexico City edition with Natalie Sutherland from the International Family Law Group. If anything you've heard here today has touched you and you'd like to make contact with us, you can find us at mysurrogacyjourney.com or our official social channels at official My Surrogacy Journey.